Sometimes as Christians, we're led to believe that if God is pleased with us, everything should go well for us in life. And if things are falling apart in life, that must mean that God is angry, displeased, or he's punishing us. And while it's true that God sometimes disciplines those he loves, we can't equate favor from God with things going well in life. Think about Jesus. Jesus did everything God the Father willed, and yet Jesus was crucified. He suffered and died for the sins of the world. As we're beginning this 11th week of our journey of 66 and 26, we see a couple other stories which highlight the fact that we can't equate God's favor with things going well in life, what we sometimes would refer to as a theology of glory. Later this week, we're going to start the book of Job in the Old Testament, telling us about a righteous man named Job. Did a lot of things right in life. Not perfect, but he did a lot of things right. And yet God tested him, and Job lost everything. He lost his children, his wealth. He lost friendship with others around him. He even lost a lot of his health, even though he was a righteous man. In our story that we begin today in the book of Genesis, we pick up the story of Joseph. We met Joseph in Genesis 37 last week, who's a favored son of Jacob. Jacob gives Joseph a coat of many colors to demonstrate his love for Joseph. And that rouses the jealousy and the anger of his own brothers. And we find that through no fault of his own, Joseph is betrayed and sold off into slavery by his own brothers, his own family. As we pick up that story today in Genesis 39, we see Joseph in the home of Potiphar, an Egyptian. And Potiphar's wife accuses Joseph of indiscretion, of actually making advances against her and abusing her, which is completely false. Joseph has done nothing wrong, and yet he suffers and is thrown into prison because of this accusation. But we also see that God does end up working all things for the good for those who love him and have been called according to his purposes, as Paul says in Romans chapter 8. And we see that even though Joseph has to suffer, he ends up being elevated to a high position in Egypt, second only to Pharaoh. And God begins this amazing story of redeeming the people of Israel and bringing them to Egypt to save them from a famine. We'll see that story in the weeks ahead. But now Joseph is elevated to that place where he is in a position to save his own family, even though they've rejected him and betrayed him. And so we see that God is at work even when we have to suffer, even through the suffering and pain that we experience in this life. We can't always equate that suffering and pain with discipline. God is maybe doing something in a big way, but it's disguised, at least for the moment, in suffering and pain. And we have to wait sometimes seasons, years, maybe even to the next life to be able to see how God was at work. But we can trust through the story of Joseph, we can see it, that God is working even when it doesn't seem like it.